My cheating wife and her lover thought I was so stupid they could steal my house with a pathetic forgery. They wanted war, so I gave them one. I pretended to be defeated, let them walk into my home to finalize their scam, and filmed them bragging about their crimes right before the police burst in. Elena and I had been married for a decade. We had what I thought was a stable, loving partnership. The centerpiece of our life was the house. It wasn't just wood and nails. It was my inheritance, my history. My grandfather built it on this plot of land after the war, and my father raised me within its walls. When he passed, he left it to me, and every spare moment and dollar I had went into restoring it, modernizing it, and making it a home. Elena had always claimed to love it as much as I did. She chose the colors for the walls, designed the garden, and hosted countless barbecues in the backyard. It was our sanctuary. The first crack was almost unnoticeable. It started with her phone. It was suddenly glued to her hand, angled away from me, and always on silent. Then came the late nights. "Just swamped at work, honey," she'd say, brushing a kiss on my cheek that felt more like a formality than an act of affection. I was a fool. I wanted to believe her. I'd make her dinner, keep it warm in the oven, and find myself eating alone at 10 p.m., staring at the empty chair across from me. I tried to talk to her. One evening, I sat her down. "Elena, is everything okay? You seem distant. We barely talk anymore." She gave a tired sigh, not even looking up from her laptop. "I'm just stressed, Alex. This new project at work is killing me. Please don't add to it." It was the perfect defense. She made me feel guilty for even asking, for being a burden. It was masterful, and I fell for it completely. I backed off, telling myself to be a more supportive husband. The cracks kept spreading. There were new clothes she'd bought that I'd never seen her wear. She started going to a new gym across town, despite us having a perfectly good one just 5 minutes away. The excuses were always plausible on the surface, but together, they painted a picture I wasn't ready to see. The woman I loved was slowly being replaced by a stranger, and I was just letting it happen. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Elena was supposedly at a work conference an hour away, not due back until late. I'd had a rough day myself and decided to treat myself to dinner at a nice Italian place downtown, one of our old favorites. As I sat there, swirling the wine in my glass, I saw her. She was walking out of a jewelry store across the street, laughing, her hand linked with a man's. He was tall, dressed in a suit that looked just a little too tight, and had a smug grin plastered on his face. As I watched, frozen in my seat, he leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a friendly peck. It was a deep, passionate kiss that made my stomach turn. In that one moment, my carefully constructed world shattered. Every late night, every secret phone call, every flimsy excuse clicked into place like a key in a lock, opening a door to a reality I could no longer ignore. I didn't confront them then. I paid my bill, my hands shaking so badly I could barely sign the receipt, and went home. I sat in the dark, in our living room, surrounded by 10 years of memories that now felt like lies. When she finally came home around midnight, humming a cheerful tune, the sight of her made me sick. "How was the conference?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of all emotion. She jumped, startled. "Oh, Alex, you're still up. It was long, so boring. You know how these things are." She walked over to kiss me, but I leaned away. "I know, Elena." Her smile faltered. "You know what? I know there was no conference. I saw you, downtown. With him." The color drained from her face. For a split second, I saw panic. But it was quickly replaced by a cold defensiveness. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She just squared her shoulders. "So what if you did?" she said, her voice dripping with venom. "Maybe I was tired of this boring life, this dusty old house. Maybe I wanted something more." That was the moment I knew my wife was gone. The person standing in front of me was someone I didn't recognize at all. She moved out the next day to stay with her lover, whose name I learned was Mark. I was heartbroken, but also strangely relieved. I thought the worst was over. I thought we could just get a divorce, she'd take her things, and I could start to heal. I was so naive. A week later, she called me. Her tone was no longer angry, but sickly sweet. "Alex, honey," she began, "I've been talking with Mark, and he's been helping me think clearly about, well, about our assets." My internal alarm started blaring. Mark, the guy she was cheating on me with, was now her financial advisor? I stayed calm. "What assets, Elena? Your car is in your name. We have separate bank accounts. This house was left to me by my father. It's a premarital, inherited property. You know that." There was a pause. "Well, yes, but I've put so much work into it over the years. My sweat equity," Mark calls it. He says, "I'm entitled to half its value." The market is hot right now, Alex. We could sell, walk away with a huge payday, and both start fresh. It's the fair thing to do. I couldn't believe her audacity. The fair thing? Elena, there is a 0% chance I am selling my family's home to fund your new life with the man you cheated on me with. It's not happening. Get a lawyer if you want, but they'll tell you the same thing. I hung up the phone, my heart pounding with rage. This wasn't about fairness. This was about greed. Mark, I later discovered, was a bottom-feeding real estate agent with a history of shady deals. He saw my house not as a home, but as a six-figure commission check with his name on it. I thought refusing to sell was the end of it. I was wrong. The desperation I saw in her eyes that day should have been a warning. Little did I know, the consequences of this decision would become terrifyingly clear in the update I'd post a month later. Life was quiet for a few weeks. I filed for divorce, and the silence from her side was unnerving. I should have known they were plotting something. The bombshell arrived in my mailbox, disguised as junk mail. It was a letter from the county records office confirming a recent title transfer application for my property. My blood turned to ice. I immediately went online to the public records portal, my hands trembling as I typed in my address, and there it was, a deed of sale signed by me, Alex, selling the house to a holding company for a laughably low price. A holding company that a quick search revealed was registered to one Mark. And the signature? It was a pathetic, childish attempt to copy my name. They hadn't even tried to make it look real. It was pure arrogance. They thought I was so stupid, so emotionally distraught, that I wouldn't even notice until it was too late. My first instinct was to call Elena and scream, to drive over to Mark's apartment and break down the door. But as the initial wave of fury subsided, a cold, calculating calm washed over me. They wanted to play dirty. They wanted to steal my home. Fine. I would let them. I would give them just enough rope to hang themselves. The next day, I was in a lawyer's office. Not just any lawyer, but the best, most ruthless real estate and criminal fraud attorney in the city. I laid everything out for him: the affair, the demand for the house, and the forged deed. He looked over the documents, a grim smile playing on his lips. "This is incredibly bold," he said, "and incredibly stupid. Forgery, wire fraud, conspiracy. They're facing serious felony charges, Alex. My advice? Don't let them know you know. Let's let them complete the crime. It makes our case airtight. Go home. Install security cameras, audio, and video. Let's see what they say when they think they've gotten away with it." The plan was set. I spent the next 2 days setting up high-quality, motion-activated cameras in my living room, kitchen, and home office. All perfectly legal within my own home. Then I made the call. I phoned Elena, putting on the performance of a lifetime. I was crying. I told her she was right, that holding on to the house was just holding on to pain. I was broken, defeated. "You win, Elena," I sobbed into the phone. "I can't fight anymore. I'll sign whatever you need." I just want this to be over." The relief in her voice was palpable. "Oh, Alex, I'm so glad you're being sensible. Mark and I will come over tomorrow with the final papers. We'll just need you to sign them in front of a notary he knows. A notary who was no doubt in on the scam. The trap was set." The next day, they arrived. Mark strolled in like he owned the place, a smug smirk on his face, while Elena avoided my gaze. I played the part of the shattered husband perfectly. I told them I had already packed a bag and would be staying with a friend. I just needed to grab a few things from upstairs. "Make yourselves at home," I said, my voice cracking. "I'll be down in a minute." I went upstairs, sat on my bed, and watched the live feed on my phone. The moment I was out of sight, their entire demeanor changed. Mark threw himself onto my sofa and put his feet up on my coffee table. "I can't believe how easy this was," he bragged, laughing. "He totally bought it. Crying like a baby." Elena giggled. "I told you he was weak. He's so attached to this dump. Once the title is officially ours and we flip it, we'll have enough for that condo in Miami." "And to think," Mark continued, "all it took was a little bit of creative paperwork. That fake notary friend of mine is worth his weight in gold. By the time this idiot figures out what happened, we'll be long gone, and it will be a civil matter that'll take him years to untangle." I had it. I had everything. Clear, undeniable confessions on high-definition video and audio. It was time to lower the boom. I walked calmly down the stairs. They looked up, surprised. Mark's smile vanished. "Did you get everything on that recording?" I asked, my voice steady and cold. Elena's face contorted in confusion. "What recording?" I held up my phone, showing them the live feed of themselves. "The one that my lawyer and 2 police detectives are currently watching from a car parked right outside your window." The color drained from both of their faces. Mark shot up from the couch, his eyes wide with panic. Elena just stood there, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. At that exact moment, the front door burst open. 2 uniformed officers and a plainclothes detective stepped inside, followed by my lawyer, who was holding a file. "Elena and Mark?" the detective said, his voice booming in the sudden silence. "You're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and a few other things we can discuss downtown." The sight of handcuffs being snapped onto their wrists, their faces a mask of pure, unadulterated shock, was the most satisfying moment of my entire life. So, before we get to the update, it's time for the final verdict. Based on everything you've heard so far, who was in the wrong here? The line between a messy breakup and felony crime was crossed in spectacular fashion. Cast your vote in the comments. Now, let's see what happened next. The update is as satisfying as you'd hope. The case against Elena and Mark was overwhelming. My lawyer had the original forged deed, the county records, and of course the crown jewel. The high-definition video of them confessing to and bragging about every detail of their crime. Their notary friend folded immediately and testified against them in exchange for a lighter sentence. When faced with the evidence, Elena's lawyer advised her to take a plea deal. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison, with the final 18 months suspended pending good behavior and probation. She also had to pay restitution to me for my legal fees. Mark, however, was a different story. It turned out this wasn't his first rodeo. He had a prior conviction for a similar real estate scam from a few years back. The judge was not amused. Mark decided to go to trial, likely thinking his charm would win the day. It did not. The jury found him guilty on all counts in less than an hour. He was sentenced to 5 years in a state penitentiary, with no chance of parole for at least 4. The divorce was finalized while Elena was awaiting sentencing. She got nothing. The house, my finances, and my freedom were all securely mine. The first few months were strange, living in the house alone. The memories were tainted. But slowly, I began to make new ones. I repainted the living room, the one they were arrested, in a bright, clean white. I reclaimed my space. Today, life is quiet, and I've come to appreciate the peace. The betrayal cut deep, but exposing their greed and ensuring they faced real, legal consequences was the closure I needed. I have my home, I have my integrity, and I've learned a very expensive lesson about who to trust. The house is no longer just my inheritance, it's a symbol of my own resilience. And that's a foundation no one can ever take from me again.